It started with a red light and a man in a gray hoodie. Midday, downtown Atlanta. The crosswalk countdown had just hit 0, but the man stepped off the curb anyway, weaving through slow-moving traffic like he didn't have a care in the world. A patrol car honked, tires squealed, and 2 officers jumped out like they'd just caught a bank robber. "Hey, you blind or just stupid?" one of them barked. The man stopped, turned, said nothing. He looked to be in his late 50s, clean-shaven, medium build, calm, too calm. The second officer shoved him back toward the sidewalk. Jaywalking, that's a citation. Unless you're trying to be cute, then it's obstruction. Still, the man didn't speak. He just raised his hands slowly, palms up, and waited. People on the sidewalk started pulling out phones. One teenager was already live streaming. "Why y'all harassing this man?" someone called out. "He didn't hurt nobody." But the officers weren't listening. The first one, badge said Nelson, grabbed the man by the wrist, spun him around, and yanked his arm behind his back. The man flinched, not from pain, from familiarity. Like he'd done this before. The cuffs clicked shut. "All this for crossing the street?" a woman muttered, recording from 5 feet away. The man in the hoodie didn't resist, didn't argue, just glanced at the camera, then back at Officer Nelson with a look that didn't match the situation. Not fear, not confusion, but patience, like he was waiting for something. And then Officer Nelson made the mistake that would make headlines by sunset. "You people think you are above the law," he muttered, loud enough for the mic to catch. "But today, you just got a reality check." The man didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just tilted his head, slow, deliberate, and let out the smallest breath of a laugh. The kind of laugh you hear from someone who already knows how this ends. When they brought him into the precinct, he gave no name, no address, no ID. "Refusing to identify, great. Let's add that to the charges," the desk sergeant said, annoyed. They tossed him in holding with 3 other men, a drunk, a shoplifter, and a teenager who looked terrified. Still, the man sat quietly, back straight, eyes steady, like a professor in a classroom full of chaos. But in the break room, 2 detectives were watching the body cam footage from the arrest. One of them, Detective Ramos, froze the frame. "Zoom in on his face," she said. Her partner frowned. "Why?" "Just do it." He did. Ramos leaned closer, her eyes widened. "No way," she whispered. "That's not just some guy off the street." She spun around, ran to the squad room, and yanked a framed photo off the wall. It was from a ceremony last year. All the senior judges in the district, smiling, shaking hands with the mayor. Dead center, the man in the gray hoodie. But not in a hoodie, in a robe. "Get him out of that cell, now!" But it was already too late. Because Officer Nelson, he was still bragging in the parking lot to a group of rookie recruits. Some folks need to be reminded. Don't matter how clean they dress, how calm they act. Law's the law. He laughed. So did the rookies. But no one laughed when the unmarked car pulled up to the curb and the chief of police stepped out. And the man in the hoodie? He walked behind him, calm, composed, and now uncuffed. "Gentlemen," the chief said coldly, "you just cuffed Judge Franklin Reeves." The squad room went quiet, not silent, dead. No one moved as Chief Delaney finished his sentence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The words hit like a gavel. Judge Franklin Reeves, 11th District, appointed by Governor Tallman himself. Officer Nelson blinked, once, twice. The rookies, their mouths dropped open. But it was the judge's eyes, still calm, still unreadable, that made Nelson take a step back. He didn't identify himself," Nelson stammered. "He refused to show ID." "He didn't have to," the chief replied. "You escalated before you asked a single question." Reeves didn't say a word. He didn't need to, because the footage said it all. And Ramos? She walked in holding her tablet. Body cam footage still paused on the moment Nelson grabbed the judge's wrist. "You said he was obstructing traffic," she said flatly. "That's interesting, because the crosswalk was green less than 3 seconds before you stopped him." Nelson swallowed hard, but he still tried. "He walked out early. He ignored my commands." "And you ignored protocol," Delaney cut in. "You didn't warn. You didn't de-escalate. You went hands-on in under 10 seconds. The judge finally spoke. His voice was low, even. "I'm not here for an apology." Everyone turned. "I'm here to observe, to listen, and to see, well, if anything changes when the badge is watching. The words hung in the air like smoke. Delaney nodded, not fully understanding. But Ramos, she understood. They put Nelson on temporary desk duty, not fired, not even suspended, just reassigned. And within hours, whispers started spreading. Why didn't the judge speak up right away? Why was he walking around in a hoodie anyway? Why go undercover? What's he trying to prove? At the precinct, opinions split. Some rolled their eyes, said it was entrapment. Others looked at Nelson differently now. But Nelson? He doubled down. He was testing us. That's not fair. He slammed a locker shut so hard it echoed down the hallway. No one passed the test, a voice behind him muttered. It was Ramos. She leaned against the wall, arms folded. You embarrassed the department. You humiliated yourself. And worst of all, you still don't get it. Meanwhile, Judge Reeves returned to court the next morning. Same courtroom, same robe, same quiet authority. But now every eye watched him differently. And in the back row, sitting silently with arms crossed, was Delaney. The chief hadn't been to court in years, but now he came every day that week, just to see how Reeves handled justice, to watch how someone with power chose to use it. 2 days later, Nelson filed a complaint against Judge Reeves, accused him of entrapment, of violating officer rights. Sounds like desperation, Ramos said as she read the filing, but Delaney signed off the investigation anyway, just to be safe. And that's when the city council got involved. One member, Councilwoman Jamila Ford, stood up in a public hearing and dropped the headline. Let's be clear, this isn't about jaywalking. This is about profiling, about officers who see a black man in a hoodie and think that's a threat, even when that man is a judge. The room erupted. Reporters flooded the steps outside City Hall. And the mayor? He went silent. No tweets, no statements, just silence, which in politics speaks volumes. Back at the precinct, Nelson was still fuming. They're turning this into a circus. He slammed his fist on the break room table. He baited me. He wanted this to happen. Ramos sipped her coffee. You're missing the point. No, you're just taking his side. Ramos stood up, calmly placing her cup in the sink. I'm not on his side, she said. I'm on the side that doesn't end with lawsuits, protests, and a city tearing itself apart. She walked out. Nelson stood alone, and the door closed louder than it should have. That weekend, Judge Reeves did something no one expected. He showed up without security at the annual police community softball game. Kids ran up to him. Adults shook his hand. Some officers looked away. But one rookie, the same kid who'd watched the arrest with wide eyes, approached him. Sir, I saw what they did, and I'm sorry. Reeves looked at the young man for a long moment, then said, don't be sorry, be better. The press conference was supposed to clear the air. It did the opposite. Under bright lights and a dozen microphones, Officer Nelson stood at the podium, flanked by his union rep and a stone-faced department spokesperson. He wasn't wearing his uniform, but his tone, still full of swagger. I did my job. I followed protocol, and I will not apologize for enforcing the law. Click, flash, click. A reporter raised her hand. Officer Nelson, Judge Reeves never resisted. Do you stand by your use of force? Absolutely, he said flatly. If anything, I was too restrained. Gasps rippled through the room, and behind the cameras, Councilwoman Ford slowly folded her arms. So did every journalist in the back row. That night, social media exploded. Jaywalking Judge was trending. So was #RestrainNelson. Clips of the arrest circulated like wildfire, especially the moment Nelson muttered, you people think you're above the law. Even news anchors couldn't hide their disbelief. He said that to a sitting judge, one anchor asked live on air. Yes, her co-host replied, and he doubled down. But in a dimly lit office near the courthouse, Reeves sat alone, watching it all unfold. He wasn't smiling. He was calculating. By Monday, the mayor finally spoke. In a brief televised statement, he said, we take accusations of racial profiling seriously, but I urge all sides to remain calm while the investigation proceeds. Reeves watched from chambers, then turned off the screen. He stood, walked to the window, looked down at the people protesting on the courthouse steps. Hundreds of them, holding signs, chanting, not for him, for justice. And yet, the pressure was mounting. Emails, letters, death threats, anonymous voicemails telling him to stay in his lane. One even said, you're not a judge anymore. You're an activist in a robe. Then came the private meeting. An emergency closed-door session with the Chief Justice, the governor's legal team, and two senior aides from the mayor's office. Reeves was invited, but not welcomed. One aide spoke first. "This is spiraling. We're asking you to consider stepping back from the bench, just temporarily." Reeves folded his hands. "Why?" "To protect the integrity of the court." "You mean to protect the image of the court?" No one answered. Then the governor's counsel leaned in. "We're not questioning your intent, Judge. We just believe your continued presence could inflame tensions," Reeves interrupted. "Cause disruption?" He leaned forward. "I am the disruption." Silence. Thick, uncomfortable. The Chief Justice cleared her throat. "Franklin, we know you meant well, but maybe this went too far." Reeves stood up, slowly. "Too far," he repeated. "You think it's gone too far because it's visible, because it's loud. But the real problem? It's always been there, quiet, constant, wearing a badge." He turned to leave. "Reeves, please," the Chief Justice called after him. "What if you're forcing the department into a corner?" He paused at the door, then said, "Good, that's where truth comes out." Later that evening, Nelson released security footage from a previous case, one that had nothing to do with Reeves. It showed a black teenager resisting arrest. Nelson's caption, "This is what happens when we don't enforce the law." The implication was clear, and the outrage was immediate. The teen's family sued. Civil rights groups demanded Nelson be fired. And Reeves? He called a press conference of his own. The courthouse steps were packed, not with reporters, with citizens. Old, young, black, white, veterans, teachers, clergy, teens in hoodies, judges in robes. Reeves stood before them all. He didn't raise his voice, didn't point fingers. He just said, "I was arrested not because I broke the law, but because I looked like someone who couldn't write it." The crowd went quiet. "You ask why I didn't announce who I was, why I let them cuff me, why I said nothing." He paused. "Because I've spent my career writing laws, but I needed to feel what it's like when they're turned against you." Cameras flashed, phones recorded. "But this isn't about me. This is about every person who never got a press conference, who never had a title to fall back on, who never made it out of that holding cell." His eyes swept the crowd. "I'm not stepping down, I'm stepping up." And with that, the crowd roared. But inside the precinct, Nelson watched the footage alone, face blank, jaw clenched. Then slowly he opened his desk drawer and placed his badge inside, just for a moment, just long enough to stare at it. The morning air outside the courthouse was colder than usual, but inside Judge Reeves' chambers, the atmosphere was electric. Detective Ramos sat across from him, holding a manila folder. Her face was tight, focused. "You're sure about this?" she asked. Reeves nodded once. 15 years ago, he said, "I was 28, just past the bar. I was driving home from a friend's wedding." He slid a black and white photo across the desk, a younger version of himself, suit, tie, a bruised eye and blood on his collar. "They pulled me over for a broken tail light, claimed I reached for something, slammed me to the ground." Ramos opened the folder. Inside, an old arrest report. One name stood out. Arresting Officer B. Nelson. "No charges were filed," Reeves said, "because there was nothing to file." He leaned back in his chair. "But the damage was done." He looked at Ramos. "I didn't fight it back then. I was scared. Still climbing, still proving myself." He paused. "But people don't change unless they're confronted." Ramos ran her fingers over the report. "You want to use this now? I want people to know who they're dealing with." That evening, a new story dropped. Judge Reeves was once assaulted by the same officer who just arrested him. The headline went viral within minutes. Every network picked it up. Cable news ran split screens of the old mugshot beside the new arrest footage. Commentators shouted. Defenders stumbled. Activists mobilized. And Officer Nelson, he went silent. For the first time. The next day, Reeves walked into court with purpose. Not to preside, but to testify. A special hearing had been scheduled, open to the public. Oversight committee members, civil rights attorneys, even federal observers were in attendance. Nelson was called to the stand first. He wore a crisp suit, no uniform, no badge. He looked older than he had a week ago. "Officer Nelson," the attorney began, "do you recognize this document?" She held up the 15-year-old arrest report. His throat moved, but no sound came. Finally, "Yes." "And do you recall arresting Mr. Reeves in 2009? He nodded once. Was there any weapon? Any threat? Any resistance? He hesitated. No. Then why the use of force? I thought he was reaching for something. What was he reaching for? Nelson blinked. I don't remember. The room buzzed. The attorney stepped aside. Let the record show that the same officer who arrested Judge Reeves last week once assaulted him under similar suspicion 15 years prior with no cause, no charge, and no accountability. Then Reeves stood, walked slowly to the front. I don't want revenge, he said, voice steady. I want recognition. He turned to the audience. I want us to stop pretending these are isolated events. I want to stop seeing my story as an exception because it's not. He looked at Nelson, and I want you to understand this isn't just about me. This is about every man you pulled over who didn't have a robe to fall back on. Nelson stared at the floor. No words, no defense. The oversight board recessed for deliberation. Outside, protesters gathered again, this time with signs showing both arrests. One read, 15 years, 2 arrests, 1 broken system. Another, how many judges have to get hurt before you listen? That night, Chief Delaney met privately with Reeves. No cameras, no press. City's on fire, Delaney said quietly. Morale is shattered. Half the department's shaken. Reeves didn't blink. And the other half? Delaney sighed. They're scared, angry. Some think you set a trap. I didn't, Reeves said. I set a mirror. Delaney rubbed his face. Nelson's career is over. We both know that. The question is, what do you want from all this? Reeves looked him dead in the eye. Change, real, documented, measurable change. Delaney paused, then said, let's talk policy. Across town, Nelson sat alone in his apartment. No badge, no uniform, just the flicker of his television, playing the hearing on repeat. He watched himself stumble, watch himself break, then clicked it off and whispered, I thought I was doing my job. The email went out at 6:12 a.m. Subject, Officer Brent Nelson, termination of employment. The message was short, precise, no dramatics. After nearly 17 years on the force, he was officially dismissed. No pension, no farewell, just a silent signature on a final line. And at 6:48 a.m., Judge Franklin Reeves stood outside City Hall as the mayor stepped forward to the mic. Camera shutters clicked like machine guns. The mayor spoke clearly. Today, we are announcing a new mandate jointly authored by Judge Reeves and the Department of Public Accountability, requiring every officer in the city to complete quarterly de-escalation and anti-bias training. He paused. This is not a punishment. This is a pivot, a new beginning. Behind him, Reeves stood still. No fist raised, no smile, just presence. Inside the chamber later that day, Councilwoman Ford presented a resolution named the Reeves Reform Act, focused on limiting discretionary stops, increasing officer accountability, and embedding civilian review into use of force cases. It passed unanimously. One councilman cried, another whispered, about damn time. As the crowd cleared, a familiar voice called out from the back row. Judge Reeves? He turned. It was the rookie from the arrest scene. Sir, just wanted to say, you being there, not just in the courtroom, but out there, it changed how I see the badge. Reeves looked at the young man, measured him, then said, that means you're ready to earn it. Meanwhile, Officer Nelson, he didn't show up at the hearing, didn't call, didn't fight it. But he did send one thing, a handwritten letter, delivered directly to Reeves' office. 4 lines. I didn't see you. I only saw what I feared. Now I see what I was afraid of. Was the truth. I failed you then, and again now. I hope you don't fail the next me. Reeves didn't respond. He didn't need to. Weeks passed. The story left the headlines. Protests faded, but not the impact. A mural went up downtown, painted across a brick wall that used to advertise cigarettes. It showed a man in a hoodie standing at a crosswalk, one hand cuffed, the other holding a gavel. Beneath it, 5 words. Know the law, no justice. Tourists took pictures. Kids posed beside it. Officers started parking on different streets. Change had a face now, and a name. That Friday, back in his courtroom, Reeves adjusted his robe, tapped the bench twice, and looked up. Next case, no speech, no self-congratulations, no victory parade, just a return to the work. Because justice wasn't in a moment, it was motion. And this was just the beginning. What would you have done if you were in Judge Reeves' shoes that day? Was his silence a strength or a setup? Let us know what justice looks like to you. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this matter to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.